What's up? It's Way Up with Angela Yee on a Wealth Wednesday. So you know what that means. Stacey Tisdale is here.
Happy Wealth Wednesdays, everybody. And we are so excited to take you way up. We have a special Juneteenth land grab and an incredible person who's leading the way in Charles Noonan. Charles, thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
And Juneteenth is on a Wednesday this year, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, and this year it's going to be a particular Wealth Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
We are planning on getting busy.
Okay.
Juneteenth.
You're getting busy.
Talk to us about it because, all right, tell us about what the plan is. And then I want to tell you my thoughts and my experiences with the land bank. So go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I DM'd you a couple times.
Okay.
Because we have properties close to each other.
Oh, in Detroit.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
All right, so the plan for Juneteenth this year, I'm doing a 5-day challenge where we are challenging individuals to learn how to buy land and land bank properties over the course of 5 days, where consecutively we're going to teach how to pick, purchase, and profit from land and land bank properties.
Okay, so explain to people listening because they may not know, because I've actually purchased property from the land bank before in Detroit, so I know how that works.
Yep.
But I want you to explain to people what land bank properties are because a lot of cities have this.
Awesome. So I'll explain it in two parts. First, I'll explain what a land bank is and then what a land bank property is.
Okay.
So land banks are government entities whose sole purpose is to turn problem properties into properties of productive use. Problem properties can be identified as vacant, abandoned, and dilapidated houses. So land banks will typically go into a city like Detroit, for example, and they'll make an agreement with them to sell these properties pennies on the dollar, as you know. Right. Most start at $1,000. And the exchange is that they're going to sell them to investors or individuals that want to turn them back into properties of productive use. They sell them for really low amounts of money. And the benefit to the county is that they get to have the properties back on the tax roll. They ask you to turn on the water, the gas, the electric, and renovate the property.
Right.
And in turn, what that does and how it creates that win-win situation is as the vacant properties get occupied and renovated, the price of the value of the houses go up and the crime rate goes down. Okay,
and these are all important things. And I want to point out, just to your point, when you buy these properties too from the land bank, a lot of times they have auctions. I know in Detroit online, it would be like a weekly auction, and they'll let you know what's going up so you can drive by the neighborhoods, because it's also important to see sometimes what these houses look like. And I think for the city, it is less expensive and better for the neighborhood for them to actually sell it to people who will fix it up than to have to, knock it down and demo it and all of that. So I think it benefits. And it's also a certain amount of time that you have to fix it up. So you can't just purchase a property and sit on it for years and, let it sit there. Because I think that would be concerning. And so. Yeah,
so they make it to where, and each land bank that makes these agreements with the counties, they make it according to the community goals.
Right.
So as I was talking to Stacey, some land banks will ask that you show proof of funds to renovate the property. They want you to show proof of licensed contractors and things like that. Those counties typically have very few land bank properties. And what they want to do is kind of preserve the goals of the community.
Right.
In Detroit, right, where it's like, hey, just get these things occupied, get people in them, get them renovated. The only thing they ask is that you have $1,000 to at least win a bid on the property. And they do bids, so it's an auction, so they do go a little bit higher, but they all start at $1,000. And then they ask within 6 to 12 months, they ask that you bring it up to certain codes and do certain renovations that are required.
Right. And even for myself, it definitely took longer than that. But as long as you're checking in and letting them see the work that's being done, then they can know at least, you're working on it. And if you don't, you'll get blight tickets, and then they don't play.
If Wait a minute. Back up. Tell people who you are in this space. Charles is the founder of Landbank.
We just jumped right in, right?
These two could talk for hours.
Yes, you're right.
Charles is the founder of Landbank Team,
and
he is the author of Hacking Landbank Properties, and he is the host of the Landbank Show. So he and Angela are Mr. and Mrs. Landbank.
No,
You can-
I haven't done as much as he has.
We're gonna do an air
it's
high
crazy.
five.
Definitely.
Yeah, those
But
two.
I definitely
yeah.
learned a lot just from the
Yeah.
process of having to go through that, because he's right. Some of those properties, when you bid on them online, some of them are going for like $300,000. They get up really high in the bidding, but some of them, I got one for $1,000 because no one bid on it.
Yeah, I know.
And so,
I know.
and I couldn't believe it, because you have a certain amount of time and you're watching it
Yeah.
transpire, and you're like, please don't let anybody bid on this property.
Charles,
All right.
how does Landbank team uncomplicate this for people and provide a community? Because I'm sitting here like, I want to do it, but I
right.
don't want to do it by myself.
So
Tell me
here, we'll
about
take
that.
a small step back, right? So I'm Charles Noonan, the founder
Hi.
of the Land, right? We'll just start from the beginning, right? We're two Brooklynites.
I said,
so
okay, I said that's your
automatically-
your company. You got
Yeah.
into this very early and had success very early.
Yes. So, in short, right, I founded this team because my experience with the Land Bank and Land Bank properties at first was hard as hell.
Yeah.
Right. I got in, I struggled. I had to go through several contractors to get my properties. And
Me too.
If you don't have a relationship with the Land Bank, you feel like they're on top of you, pressuring you. As you do a couple of properties, you realize they're there to support you.
Right.
Right. So I went through this struggle, and so I started to get them for my kids. That's what really made me look at other houses and other states, because Brooklyn gentrification, the property values went sky high. I own a brownstone, and as it started to appreciate like crazy, I'm like, all right, what about my kids, right? They're regular, lazy athletes, basketball kids that
His
I
son
don't.
is here,
Hey,
by the
hey,
way.
Yeah. He knows which
Yeah.
he knows
He
which
should
one
be
I'm
working.
talking.
He was supposed to be taking pictures.
He knows which one I'm talking about, though. He knows which one I'm talking about. So I'm like, all right, I got to find a way for the kids, right? I have to pave a way so that they could afford to live in Brooklyn like I do and don't have to move really far. So I went online and I'm looking for just regular, inexpensive houses that I could just buy. And then I saw the Detroit Land Bank had houses for $1,000.
Yeah.
I was like,
It used to be
what?
500 at first. They started at 500.
I don't know
and
that
then-
far back.
Yeah.
When I saw it with 1,000. I was still happy at 1,000. So Stacy, I'm like, all right, I could just get like 5 for this one, 5 for my other son. And then when they graduate college, they'll have like a cash flowing asset that will afford them to live in Brooklyn with the new prices. And then going through it, I had this level of resilience, because it wasn't like it was for me and extra cash. It was like, this is for my kids. I have to get through this. So as I'm struggling with contractors, they're disappearing with deposits. They're not seeing the vision. They're not seeing, I'm from New York. I could bring 1,000 people and we do they're like, dude, just give me that 500 and I'm out of here. Right. So going through the struggle, I made it to like 4 or 5 properties. And then I got in pretty good with the Land Bank. They offered me the opportunity to buy a block of properties on Weyburn Street, and I bought it. But everybody from New York was like, dude, tell me how you're doing it. Like, you got to introduce me to it. And I was like, man, it ain't what you think. Like,
Yeah.
I can't bring y'all, and I'm kind of getting ripped off and going through it and paving my way. So they forced me, right? My best friend jumped in, a couple other friends, and I'm like, all right, so now we got some company. Maybe we could start to figure things out here, because the city is such a historic city. The houses are beautiful. They're huge. They're way bigger than what we get in New York. They
Yeah.
have backyards. And I'm just like, if we could find a way where we could all buy these properties in concentrated areas, we could force our own appreciation. We can provide safe places for people to walk up and down the street, because in certain cities, they didn't turn the lights on. So if there aren't enough occupied houses on certain streets, they wouldn't turn the lights on. So
That's
there's no street
ridiculous.
lights at night. And then if they're like 2 houses, and this is what really touched my heart and turned my mission into like one of profit and purpose, because there are some houses where little kids have to walk by. There's some streets where little kids have to walk by, like 5 or 6 vacant, abandoned houses. The elderly have to walk by. You have animals, just crime happens there. And it was like, all right, this is bigger than me just getting a house where I could get $1,000.
But that's really taken off. How many people has the Land Bank team helped?
Yep.
And it's nationwide.
Yeah. So learning about the Detroit Land Bank, I found out about the Center for Community Progress, and that gives like the national land bank map where you can identify land banks across the country. So we created the team. The team just grew like crazy, and to date, we've helped over 2,000 individuals buy property across the United States. That includes land and land bank houses.
And one of them is right here, Afua,
Hi.
who, by the way, she told us she has 31 properties already.
Not 31
Yes,
properties.
31 properties.
Right. So tell us how you ended up joining the land bank team.
So, I mean, I had, always been interested in real estate, and I was just, looking and listening to podcasts, and one morning on my way to work on the train, I was listening to a podcast, and it had Charles on there. They're talking about land banks, and they mentioned that you can get properties for as low as $300, and I couldn't believe it. So I must have listened to that podcast like twice just to make sure I didn't miss anything. So after that, they mentioned that there would be a property challenge. Charles was hosting a property challenge, and I decided to join. I just literally I did all my research, and let me join and give this a shot. And it was the 4th day. It was 5 days. I only found out on Thursday morning. I actually joined in the evening, and I was able to do Thursday and Friday. And then, of course, requested the replays. And I just couldn't believe that you could get property as low as $300 or even $100 or so. So I decided to take the next step. I joined the mentorship, which is, part of the land bank team. And it was just, a group of us, young, women and men who were interested in buying, going the land bank route. And Charles broke everything down. It was a very simple system that he taught us. How do you acquire the property? What things to look out for? Once you get those criteria set, then, moving on, how do you register with the land bank and how do you purchase it? So he introduced us to a myriad of land banks.
What are some things to look out for?
Oh, well, for instance, it has to look for your roadways, okay? Look for the roadways. Also have to look for adjoining, property. If there's property in the vicinity, that's very helpful. It means, the electricals and so on are already like in the earth, so you don't have to start from scratch. So things like that were very helpful.
And the land bank team takes you from teaching you about the process, learning about the process, and then I know when I heard about this, I'm like, okay, so how do I monetize this?
Correct.
Did they teach you how to do
yes,
that as well?
Yes, they do that too. So for me, my personal goals were, quarter one was for me to get the knowledge, do whatever it was to get the knowledge, and that was joining the mentorship team. And again, Charles is so hands-on. Literally, like, they break everything down in the coursework. And you can always call Charles if you have any questions whatsoever. It took me a while to buy my first property. I didn't buy it till towards the end of
Which
the
is
mentorship.
fine.
Right.
Now you have 31.
I needed to, just go
Confidence.
through. Exactly.
Yeah.
Go
Right.
through what I needed to go through to verify and then, assuage my fears. Once you do your research and your due diligence, it's okay, proceed, right? So, yeah, it was a simple system that was, easy enough to
Where
follow.
did you buy your first property?
So it's in Arkansas.
Okay.
Yeah, so different counties. Some are in Sharp County, some are in Fulton, and the like. Yeah.
Okay.
And you want to build on it? You want to sell it?
I do. So I actually, want to buy and hold. I want to turn those lots into properties. I want to build on those properties. And my personal passion is I want to find folks that really need the housing and be able to provide them, decent, affordable housing.
Okay.
So that's my goal.
We need that, especially right now, because housing
It's crazy.
is, absolutely.
Yeah. And with the monetizing part of it, the land bank team actually helps people figure out what they want to do with it, and you have partners who help people finance the changes they want to make on it.
Yeah. So that was a big part of it for me, right? So people joining the team, joining the community. I came from corporate America, so it was like, all right, I had money and like really good credit where I could just buy these properties and invest because I knew real estate. I knew enough about real estate that they were smart investments because they were debt free. So it's hard to falter debt free, right? There's no you can lose the money you put up, but you're never going to lose the house as long as you pay for the taxes and insurance. So as we got team members, I started to notice the struggle was funding and financing for renovations or
Right.
funding to build. So again, I just had to go and just looking to serve the community. We partner with certain banks, credit repair people that help with credit to help people get the funding that they need. And then there are two companies I'll mention that are African American driven. One is owned, and I know the liaison that we work with is African American, and he heads their funding initiatives. One of them is Prime One Lending. That's an African American owned bank that looks forward to helping and funding individuals of color in their real estate endeavors. And the other one, it's a program called HAC, HAC. They specialize in new builders, new investors, and new developers. So between those two, they've done a really good job of helping Landbank team individuals.
Charles, let me ask you about hard money loans, because I know people, and that's why I'm asking you. I saw your face, because I know people who will be like, I want to do this, but I don't have the credit. I don't have this. I'll just get a hard money loan. Now, I want to know what your thoughts are about hard money lenders, especially for new investors.
I hate them. Don't do it. Find other ways. And there are, with the information that's out today, there are other avenues that we can use to get the money that's needed. So I'll give you an example.
This is for renovation. You don't need, you guys are the experts of this, you don't need credit and all that stuff to actually buy one of these land bank
So here's the
homes.
best thing. To buy a land bank property, you just need the money.
Yeah,
you
just
don't
have to
need
pay.
you don't need good credit. You don't need good credit. You don't need it just dispels such a myth and removes so many barriers for us to get into real estate, because you don't need good credit. You don't have to be on your job for 2 years like the realtors ask. You don't need like these progressive tax returns where you made $50,000 one year, and if you made 48, like it's no good, you don't qualify.
But what you do need is the money to fix it up,
Right.
or a loan,
Yes.
and that's where.
So back to hard money
yeah.
loans. Okay,
So,
now I
yes.
can buy it, but don't take a hard money
So
loan.
here's the concept, and when I started like this whole movement and initiative, it was more so surrounded by us creating debt for our future generations. So part of my slogan initially was, we have to be mindful of creating generational wealth and not debt through real estate, because traditional real estate, you can just be passing on debt. A lot of people who do hard money loans are getting properties where they're not like cash flowing properly. They're cash flowing like $200 or $300. My son, if I told him, hey, you got this 8-unit building that you have to manage, it's $1 million of debt, but you get like $200 per door. He gonna be like, what? Like, nah, Dad, like you keep that, right? That just doesn't work for us. It's so risky to lose it, foreclosure. Like, it's hard to pass that down, especially they have their own lives. They don't want to take on your dreams and initiatives that you started. It's like sometimes our children are like, nah. However, if I told him, look, we got an 8-unit in Detroit on West Chicago Boulevard, right off of Dexter.
Beautiful.
It's paid off, right? It's paid off. You just gonna collect $8,000 a month. His answer gonna be like, I bet. Like,
Thanks,
is
Pops.
it? Yeah, thanks, Pops. Right. So the concept was like, we have to start creating generational wealth and making sure we're not creating debt. So there's also there are two companies in Detroit that will lend on land bank houses before you get the release of interest. One of them is Greene Oak Lending. So they are really good. They have their own partnership and agreement with the land bank, and they understand that the land bank is going to hold a small interest in the property until the requirements are met, and then they'll do what's called a ROI, a release of interest. So Greene Oak Funding will give funding for land bank properties. The other way that people get funding, and I kind of like this strategy, but you have to be very disciplined. So for a land bank house, you don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars if you pick it right to do renovations. Individuals are doing like 0% interest credit cards for like 12 or 18 months. I think that's a good strategy for land bank houses if you're disciplined. So let's just say
be
you
able to pay that credit card.
you have, and I tell everybody in the land bank team, like, don't spend no money right now. Like, pay that credit card off, because the interest is going to hit.
Right.
And you don't want to be in a situation where, you know, you're starting to take money, your credit card hits, now you're not making money, and then the work becomes harder. So I tell people just make sure we try our hardest not to get liens on the property because the concept is we want to keep these properties in-house, we want to keep them in our last names, and we want to pass them down.
Charles, how do you know which properties to pick? Because a lot of times with the land bank, they'll have properties listed, but you can't go inside and see. So you don't necessarily know how much work it's going to take when it's time to fix these properties up. So when you're figuring out, when the team is figuring out, okay, this is a great property, let's bid on this, let's do that. Sometimes it's somewhere where you don't live. What's your strategy when it comes to
That's a great question.
choosing?
I made a small video, and part of the coursework, right, is to learn to buy the ugliest house on the prettiest block. Meaning, and the land banks, they do a fairly decent job of showing you as many pictures of the inside as they can. And there are several things that we look for. We typically, in Michigan, for example, we really look for the ugliest house on the prettiest block. We look to make sure there are no foundation issues. We know you're going to have to do new electrical, new plumbing, like automatically without question, because they've been vacant for so long. And then we make sure we try to look to see if floors are buckling or not. We also, this is a key, this is a big one, right? You can send, we have contractors in Detroit, we've been doing it for so long, that will go and check the water line.
Okay.
So you know in Detroit they got the water key, right? You know they're not supposed to, but they have their own water key. Like contractors, you find a good one, they have a water key. And for those that don't know what that is, right? That's the key that the water company uses to go in and turn the water on and off. So we send our contractors in to check the water. Land banks will tell you to go in. They say there's codes on the doors, but there's no codes.
Right. I know people do just, if they know a property's going up, they will go and like.
Yeah. It's kind of like unspoken for the county.
The more you say, the more I'm so glad that this can be done in community and not alone. Tell our audience about your challenge and the goals and how you've done this with over 2,000 people. And you do that, and you guys, I've seen videos of it. You guys like swarm an auction.
I don't want to take credit for those because it looks scary when you have like this group of people. So we did a challenge before. We did 2 challenges before. The first one was Deeds Under Trees, where the concept was for us to finally, like, let's give gifts that really make sense, that kids will never forget, that loved ones would never forget. So the Commissioner of State Lands in Arkansas, COSL.org, has these daily auctions where properties land starts at $300. All right, that's probably where Ford got most of her properties from, right? So I did a challenge, and developing an area in Arkansas was the focal point. So that challenge was phenomenal. I teach them over 5 days and teach all the like the nuances of buying land. The second challenge.
Tell us about this one.
I'm getting there because but I have to, like, there's one thing that I have to talk about because we don't want this thing to get out of control, right? So the second one was Buy the Block, and it was like where we focused on buying blocks of properties together as a community, clusters of properties, and we were going to renovate, develop, whatever we do together. So we actually went to an auction together. The COSL is online. We actually went to an auction together. So I'm like me, just one individual, the founder of the team. The challenge went crazy, like over 500 people. Wow. 200 people came out to the auction. Every person bought property. But what happened was the energy just grew. Yeah. It went out of control, right? So we got these Buy the Block shirts on. On the back, it says becoming our ancestors' wildest dream, one deed at a time. So now you know the color of our group. Yeah. We're in Scranton, PA. I rented out a hotel. We're going over like the details of the auction and how it's going to work. And they start yelling, "Buy the block, buy the block." I'm like, wait, no, like, I don't know if we could do this here, right? It looks like the energy was amazing. So going forward, we got to kind of like keep it down because it's kind of on me a little bit. And I don't want to be guilty. I want it to just remain focused on us buying properties, right?
You want to be a leader, lead.
Yeah, so if I'm going to lead, it ain't going to be no rowdy, crazy,
Right.
wow, picket, protest, angry type of thing. It's going to be like control. Hey, we in here to get money. We here to get the properties. We're going to develop. This is a long-term movement. It's not a moment. It's a movement. So the next challenge that came up is Juneteenth. And I figured, like, what better time to do a 5-day challenge and really get the focus and the attention of our community than to do a challenge around Juneteenth. So this challenge is from June 16th to the 20th. We are in there now buying properties as we speak at sites like the Commission of State Lands.org, where you can buy property in Arkansas for just $200 or $300 for even like a quarter acre. Those are really good properties. And what we're going to do over the course of the 5 days, so we have the banks coming in. American Express is going to be one of the first speakers. We have
Nice.
a rep from Chase coming in. Citizens Bank is really good. Is a good bank. They will give a line of credit based on your bank statements. We have a good friend of mine, Herman Dulce, who's going to do funding.
Oh, we've had
We've had
here.
Herman up here.
Yeah. He came with me to the challenge.
Yeah, I
he
saw
bought
him, yeah.
properties. Oh, did you?
Yeah, I saw that.
Nice, that's my guy. So partnering with people like that really know their stuff, like experts in the industry. So for people that may need help with credit and funding, it's like, hey, I know this guy could help you. He has tried, like, he's the guy, right? So partnering with him, with the banks. And then on Tuesday, so that's Sunday is where we started. That's like the funding day. The following day, I'm going to teach everybody everything that I can about land banks, buying land, how to look for them. We need to make sure that we're buying properties that we could use that are worth it. So we want to make sure we're buying, because we don't know how to buy land, right? We know how to buy a lot of stuff, but buying our land back is something that we don't know. So I teach how to look for road frontage, how to make sure we're looking for on the street. Like, these are simple things. You can just use Google, look at the street to see if there's a manhole. And that's how you know if it has county sewer lines, water and sewer lines, right? Because sometimes in these rural areas, you can buy a piece of land and it doesn't have a sewer line.
Right.
And you got to dig a septic tank,
Ooh.
right?
That's
Exactly.
that's a
That's
lot.
terrible.
So I'm teaching our people things like this.
So over the 5 days,
Yeah.
people are going, by the end of the 5 days, I'm a land bank, I'm an owner.
You can be.
Yeah, if
You certainly can be.
But he wants to make sure you know what to purchase.
Yeah,
And
so,
you- and-
so
Yeah.
I freely give that information, but I don't recommend you buy without learning first, right? So I want you to learn. We have to get out of the habit of just trying to do things on our own.
Right.
Just because we know how doesn't mean, like, you should just go to Detroit and just start buying stuff,
Right.
because it can be
Definitely
bad,
shouldn't,
right?
yeah.
It can be bad. It can be bad.
And the last missing piece I would say is contractors, because like you said, you had to switch contractors multiple times.
Yeah.
And so even finding licensed people who can do the work and contractors who aren't going to run off, who are reliable. You know, I've had my own issues with contractors as well.
Of course.
I think anybody who's had to do a rehab has had those same issues. I don't know too many people who have had the same contractor throughout multiple projects. So is that something also that there's help with?
We teach how to find. In Michigan, we have our own. We have contractors that we use that are trusted, and it took a long time to get there.
Yeah.
So there's a hardware store called Dexter Hardware on Dexter in Detroit. Right, it's a famous hardware store. I got close with the owner, the person that runs it. Her name is Tiny. And she like recommended me because she saw the struggle. She
Right.
saw me buying. She saw me working. And she saw me supporting her. And I'm like, man, like, why? And I started asking her, like, hey, what's wrong with these guys here? Like,
It's tough.
Why-
And there's a lot of construction going on in the
Yeah.
city. It's really hard to find
yeah,
great contractors.
yeah.
So people can start by signing up for the challenge
Yep.
at propertytopassive.com.
Absolutely.
It's June 16th.
To the 20. It's virtual.
It's virtual.
It's
Okay.
virtual.
So
And it's-
anybody anywhere can do it. Love it.
So it's part of a big Juneteenth movement to get
Absolutely.
our community to make take back our land as you've described it to me. And I also love that when they do this collectively, that we're also creating safe neighborhoods.
Absolutely. We're creating that sense of community again. That's what's important, right? So if someone is new, they have AFWA that they can ask questions about,
Yep.
right? They can buy strategically near where she owns property. We teach, and here was the concept too. A lot of it started in Detroit. Like that's where I had the team because one, I want a company to come with me. So I'm like, hey, I want to learn.
Come
All
on.
right, right. It's just better with people,
Yeah,
right?
it
Like
is.
going in far and just unknown areas, it's better. And at the time I was going, it was almost like the murder capital of the country. But I figure we look alike. I'm here to help. And I never ran into issues. And you have to admit, they are really nice people.
Yeah, it's amazing.
They're
and
nice people.
And we see everything that's happening in Detroit right now.
Yeah.
That was a great place to
Absolutely.
invest in. And so and I also recommend when people do things like, make sure you do go and see
Yeah.
where you're going to be and also meet people like you did. That helps a lot too. And I think people also who are from there, we have to respect that too.
Yeah.
And you always want to make sure that you're a positive asset to a community.
They do support you.
Yes, they do.
The neighborhood supports you. Neighbors. Oh, here's if I shared the Detroit Landbank, it's called buildingdetroit.org. The neighbors. The best thing you can do is introduce yourself to the neighbors. They will embrace you. They will be your security guards.
Right.
Neighbors call me all the time. Hey Charles, is this your guy? Did he change vans? Do you have somebody? They will certainly call because it's their block.
They'll be like, somebody broke in two blocks down, just
Yeah.
letting you know. Like, they tell you everything that's going on,
They
which is
do.
amazing.
So I felt like I was called upon to bring other people here. It's a gold mine of an investment, right? We're not going to lose into foreclosure because we have issues with foreclosure. Like
Right.
our people lose properties at the highest rate. So I figured this is a safe investment. You can't lose the property because there's no debt on the property. So you're never going to lose it. You'll be able to pass this property down. You may struggle a little in renovating if you try to do it by yourself. Luckily, we created a team where a new person could ask F4, hey, how was your experience with Kevin, the contractor? Was he good? She's going to say, yeah, he was slow. He's slow, but he ain't going to rob you.
Yeah.
Right? You already
You
know.
could be slow. I'm fine with that as long as you working.
Yeah, yeah. It's just
and
different.
communicate with me.
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
why we created the team, and that's why we created this challenge for Juneteenth. We cannot get our names back, but we can get our properties back.
PropertyToPassive.com. You guys got to sign up. I definitely have already purchased, a property from the land bank, so that's why I'm glad we were able to have this conversation.
Yes.
Fua is here as proof positive of how she joined and did a challenge as well. So appreciate you, Charles, for coming. Everybody, make
course.
sure y'all hit him up. And, yeah, let's get it going.
Let's
get our
go.
properties.
Let's get it.